As usual, I'm paralyzed by my own virtue. That's me, right? How many times can you scribble "How dare you" in the margins of one New York Times op-ed from 1999?
All right.
Yeah, start your show.
All right, relax. Here we are, Abe. Cast Iron Brains, a podcast that has established that baseball is life, which raises an important question. Now that Little League baseball season is over, what the hell do we do with ourselves now? My name is Bob, sitting across the way from my good friend and co-host. That's Abe. How you doing tonight, Abe?
Doing well, Bob.
Yeah, here we are. Lori's here too. How you doing tonight, Lori?
I am looking forward to this tight, focused, short episode. And to answer your question, we get jobs.
Tonight is Monday, June 25th, 2020. No, it's not a Monday at all. It's a Sunday.
Correction.
June 25th, 2023. Recording on a Sunday night because tomorrow night we have a swim meet, a makeup swim meet for the children. And then Tuesday night, if we recorded Tuesday night, which you said you can't, so beside the point. But even if we were...
Yeah.
Ooh, nice. If we were to record Tuesday night, I have a flight out of Charlottesville at 5 in the morning on Wednesday morning. Ooh. So I wouldn't have time to edit or really put the show together in a meaningful way. Even if I did just insert Abe as, I programmed the AI to give me the requisite number
We're
of
getting close.
Peyton Manning related hatred topics and then sliding in the right number of how dare yous and...
Come on.
I don't know about that, Bob, that sort of stuff.
And with my listening schedule, it will take a few weeks for me to listen to this episode, and I will forget what I actually said, and I'll accept as fact.
Right. It's close enough. That sounds like me. It's good enough. Let's see here. Sunday, we'll
do the quick baseball recap. Everyone's wondering.
Yeah, everyone obviously wants to hear all about our baseball results. I don't remember where we left our listeners.
We left out, well, it was Monday. We hadn't played McIntyre yet.
Right.
There was
so
a
we had
rain
not yet,
thing? Was it
right, so we had a rain postponement against what I said was the number one team in our tournament here. We got our asses kicked pretty effectively in the first game of that against those guys. Ultimately gave up 13 runs in the first inning. And it wasn't that bad. I mean, obviously, you can't really say that it was a close game when you give up 13 runs in the first inning. But it wasn't as bad as it seems to give up 13 runs in the inning. And I won't go through the play-by-play to justify that statement, but Little League is weird. Let's just leave it at that. And that game ended up 14-2, and we played better than the score indicated. But the bad news about that game is that it left us in the position where, because we gave up so many runs in that game, we ended up being the 4 seed in the entire weekend tournament, right? So we go from being a 2-1 team, feeling pretty good about ourselves, only having lost to what I perceived as the best team in the tournament, to now being the 4 seed that has to now play again this same team in the first round of the elimination tournament.
Which, by the way...
It's hard to beat the same team twice, they say.
I did not know that was one of the possibilities, because I remember last week you were either going to shift into like a better situation or like it was like 1-2.
Yeah.
Right. So I was mistaken because I thought that it would go to the head-to-heads, but because there were 3 2-1 teams and 1 4-0 team, instead of going head-to-head, because we didn't all play each other because of the nature of this round robin, it instead, like if it had just been 2 teams at 2-1, they would have gone, was there a head-to-head matchup? What was the result of that? That team gets the higher seed. But because there were 3 teams all 2-1, and there was no consistent head-to-head situation, they have to go to number of runs allowed as the first tiebreaker in that situation. And we gave up 1 more run than across 3 games than the team that ends up in the 3 seed.
Oh, wow. So, it came down to 1 run.
Came down to 1 single run, which means that I can point to the specific errors by very specific children throughout the weekend to say, this was the asshole that cost us the spot.
And that's when I lost sleep.
Right.
Because my whole life, I've tried to avoid basically team sports. Because I didn't ever want a team to lose because of a mistake I made.
Right.
Like, I literally my whole life have avoided that feeling. But because I know that my son was one of the, like, I don't think he quite knew, but, like, I was feeling the guilt that he could have potentially felt. It was awful.
Right.
I've gone, like, literally my whole life avoiding that feeling that I got to feel on Tuesday night.
Yeah. Anyway, so that's our situation. Whatever. You got to play the, you want to be the best, you got to beat the best, So after taking a beating on Tuesday night, then it absolutely, we have a deluge on Wednesday night.
It rained so hard for so long.
For like 48 hours, it rained. It was like we were in a different part of the world. Like, it was bizarre. It was like being in the jungle or something, because it rained.
Yeah, it would go from raining hard to raining lightly to raining hard, and that's it.
Yeah, it just rained for 2 fucking days. And so we couldn't really practice. Finally, on Friday, we got out there and we had a spectacular practice. Like, it was great. We know that we're going to go up against this kid who throws real hard. So we're getting up in front of our kids and we're 25 feet away from them and we're throwing fastballs at them. Like, we're going to teach you assholes how to hit these hard and fast baseballs. And they had great practices, like every single one of them. It was an awesome, awesome day of practice. And at the end, I said to one of the other coaches, I was like, so, awesome practice, huh? He's like, yeah, best practice yet. I was like, you know what that means? And he goes, what, we're going to win tomorrow by 100? I said, no, we're going to get our asses kicked tomorrow. That's how it goes.
That's what it has meant.
Is that
It has always worked.
That's how it works?
In my experience with these kids, it's like they have an awesome practice. The next game goes
That was
poorly.
it.
If we have a totally shit for brains practice where nobody's paying attention and nobody hits any balls and nobody makes any plays in the outfield or the infield, the game turns out totally fine.
So I wonder why that is. Is it like the false sense of confidence? Like, we got this.
I think it's probably coincidence.
Regression to the mean is all it is. It's just the law of averages. But anyway, it felt good, though, the next day. Like, we get up there, and first of all, me and one of the other guys spends a couple of hours working on the field to try to get the field ready to play on because of all the rain that we had. But the kids get there, and they're in relatively high spirits, and it feels like we're going to be just fine. And for the first 5 innings of the game, it is going very well. We are winning 1-0. We got a run in the first inning, and the only regret coming out of the first 3 or 4 innings is that we had runners on base in the first and second innings with less than 2 outs that we didn't convert into runs. So we had bases loaded at one point. We had 2 runners on with less than 2 outs. And we could only scratch the 1 run across. And it felt like, man, we're really letting them hang on in a situation where, by the feel of this game, we're kind of dominating. Right. Like, they weren't doing anything. We had only allowed them 1 base runner through the first 4 innings, I believe. And, like, our pitching was solid. Everything was going great. But you let a good team hang around, and eventually something's going to happen. And in the 5th inning, it sort of felt like we still had you don't like to talk in these sorts of terms when you're talking about children, but it felt like we had our foot on their fucking throats still at this point. Like, we had all of the momentum and all of the energy of this game, and they just seemed listless and dead. And like, yeah, they're a good team, but we're making outs and we're doing fine. And then the first play in the 5th inning is a grounder. I forget who it went to, but Calvin's playing first base. And they called him safe because Calvin's foot was off the bag, was the claim of the umpire. Now, I'm not going to sit here and say that Calvin's foot didn't come off the bag. We all watched his foot come off the bag, but it was because he was stretching, made the catch, and then his foot came off the bag.
Okay.
So the umpire's just looking at the bag and sees the foot come off, and he either doesn't hear or didn't see the fact that Calvin had the ball first. And he did. He absolutely did. It was a blown call by the umpire. He was flat wrong. I got confirmation from the other team's head coach, who was their first base coach, like the guy, like the base coach for them. He thought that the kid was out. We all thought the kid was out. The people in the press box behind the home plate all thought that the kid was out. But it doesn't matter because the asshole umpire says he's safe.
And
whatever.
At this level, there isn't a interaction that you would have to share your thoughts.
We all sort of groaned, but that's not the sort of play where you can be like, can we appeal this or whatever? Yeah. And so the first base guy calls him safe, and then we look down at the home plate umpire, and we're like, kind of throw our arms up like, hey, what did you think about that? And he's making he came off the bag motion with his hand. It's like, so he's affirming the call,
Also,
so there's no one further to appeal it to. Both umpires are making this claim.
I don't like to sit there, but my choice seat in this field is right in the middle of center field where I can see everything sort of from a straight on angle. Mm-hmm. I thought the kid was safe. Like, I don't know anything. Right. I can't really see first base at all, but I didn't think like that guy was clearly out. Right. Like, Right.
We are 10 feet. We're 10 feet from the bag, standing there at the dugout, though. Like, we're watching it happen. Like, we're closer than the umpire, who was playing down the line a little bit. He was fucking out. Whatever. I have no doubt in my mind that Calvin made the play. Doesn't matter.
What is a turning point?
You might say that. So, next kid walks, and that was a fine, looked like legitimate walk to me. The kid who walked next to load the bases walked on a pitch where, you don't often hear the whole crowd gasp at once at a bad call. But this was a strike. We heard the entire press box gasp when it was called a ball. Our entire dugout gasped. Our little catcher just goes, "What?" And he's and he's holding his glove in the middle of the plate at where he caught it. Not like I'm framing it where I actually caught it 4 feet this way and I brought it back this way. He's just holding the ball, and he hadn't chirped at all at the umpire all day long, even though he had sort of a wide zone. Whatever, it doesn't matter. He just goes, "What?" And what's funny is I immediately I forget exactly what I said, but I was I admonished him to not talk to the umpire in that fashion. But the head coach, who's at first base, looks at our bench and shrugs and goes, "Your guess is as good as mine." So their team's coach knows that this was a fucking strike. Everybody in the ballpark knows that this was a strike, but for some reason, it's a walk. Right. And that ends our starting pitcher's day, by the way. So that's it. He's thrown his 75 pitches. Okay. He's now walked the bases loaded in the
coach's kid, by the way.
Right. Coach's kid in the 5th inning, walks the bases loaded. Still 1-0 us, but there's nobody out. There's 3 runners on, and we're bringing in a new pitcher. All right. So this is more detail probably than anybody wants. But
there was a lot of coaching going on.
Lots of coaching happening. So we play our infield entirely, because at this point you've got the bases loaded. A grounder that gets to your infield scores a tying run, right? Unless you're playing your players in which case, if it's hit right at them, because of course if you play in, your angles are worse on all of the balls that are hit in the infield. So the hope is that because your 4 infielders are playing in, somebody will be positioned roughly where the ball is going. You pick it up, you throw it home, you get the out, and then you move on to the next one, right? So both corner infielders are playing at the bag or a couple of steps in from the bag, and the shortstop and the second baseman are playing basically in the baseline, or maybe a step inside the baseline. Rather than playing deep in the hole where you normally see them almost on the grass, they're playing in. The pitcher who had started the game has now moved to first base, and Calvin goes to second base. So that's our alignment, right? The pitch is popped up on the infield. It's the only fair way of saying what happens. And this is significant because of something called the infield fly rule, which is very confusing to a lot of people, but is actually very simple, which is that if there are runners on base in a position to be forced, right? So a runner on first, runners on first and second, or runners on first, second, and third, which is our situation. The bases are loaded, and there's less than 2 outs, right? Because so if there's runners on base and less than 2 outs in a position where the runners can be forced, and a ball is popped up, the umpire should immediately signal that the batter is out. Right? Yeah. Because that's an infield fly. Because otherwise, what you could do if you were like a sneaky, clever ball player,
you can game it.
Is that you pretend like you're going to catch the ball, and then you catch it in your glove, and then you drop it, or you just let it fall at your feet. And because of the way baseball works, the players on the bases would then have to pants on fire, run their asses around the bases as fast as they can in order to avoid the force play, right? So the rule is in place to protect the offense, to make it so that the defense can't fuck with the offense and just drop an easy out in order to turn a ball into a double play. Crucially, that matters, right? Because this is not something to protect bad defense. Instead, it's something to protect an offense from having unfair double plays or triple plays turned against them.
Right.
The umpire did not signal for an infield fly. And because our defense is playing in, our first baseman, who's the coach's kid who started the game and pitched a great 4+ innings on the mound, looks up and sort of like, because he's moving back and because it's popped up kind of relatively high, he gets himself spun around. Like he doesn't, it's hard to locate your body in space when you're moving backwards. So he's moving backwards, spinning one way. He basically turns to the wrong shoulder, and ultimately the ball falls at his feet. And just lands there, and then everybody takes the fuck off.
Right.
And or really, because they'd all gone halfway, they would have been fucking out. By the way, if he catches it, it's an easy double play because he just throws back to one of the bases where these kids had left. But instead, it's on the ground, and the players advance to score. They all move up one base basically, and we are like utterly perplexed by why the infield fly rule wasn't applied. Right. And by the way, this is a rule that can be applied retroactively. So even if he doesn't call it right when the ball goes up into the air, which, to be clear, is when he's supposed to, he can still say, you're right. That should have been that's an infield fly rule. Runners have to go back because I didn't make the call appropriately, and the batter is out.
And this seems to be a pretty easy argument to make, right? Like, hey...
It was, but the ball landed... If you have first base, second base, and the pitcher's mound, and you drew lines in from all those places toward each other, it landed there.
Okay.
In the infield.
It landed...
After having popped up.
Right. I mean, it was...
There's no other way to describe...
Yeah.
Like...
If you were animating this in a GIF with like a diamond shape and little X's and circles for the different players and the ball, like it's what you would find in the rule book of what an infield fly rule should look like. And so we go to the umpire and he's like, why wasn't the infield fly rule called? This is a textbook definition of an infield fly. And he's like, oh, it's a judgment call. And in my judgment, that's not a routine play because your infielders were playing in. That because they were playing in, it's no longer a routine play for them to make. It's like, first of all, asshole, these are 9-year-old children.
They don't know what they're doing.
There is no such thing as a routine play in Little League Baseball.
Right.
Everything is like, holy shit, a baseball play happened. When a grounder goes to the shortstop and they successfully corral it and throw it across to first base, that looks like a routine play. But that's a fucking miracle.
It's gorgeous.
It's like the most beautiful thing you've ever seen. And yeah, because it's All-Stars, it happens more frequently than it did during the regular season.
Right.
But still, it's like, oh, wow. It's anything but fucking routine anytime a routine baseball play happens, okay? So that's first of all. Secondly, nonsense. This was a ball that was popped up on the infield with less than 2 outs and the bases were loaded. That's the infield fly rule. 1,000 times it's the infield fly rule. You don't get to say that because the coaches positioned the kids 6 feet from where they normally do, that all of a sudden it's no longer a routine play. What are you talking about? So it's us making this case, like forcefully making this case at this point.
The guy came, or was that after? Was
The
that
tournament
after the second one?
so we're having this conversation. The people in the press box, which I would call it the press box, but it's like the booth behind the plate where the announcer sits, has got observers from the. So we have a couple of umpire observers, and we have the person who's the official scorer, and a couple other hot shots or whatever back there. And they're like, do you want to read the rule book? Like, to the umpire. They're like, I have the rule book here. Do you guys need to see this? Because everybody fucking here knows this is the infield fly. The tournament director, who's this like 77-year-old obese man, comes waddling down the field.
I hope they never hear your podcast, dude. This is tough.
It's not. It's just the reality of the situation. I'm describing life as it is. I think Steve's a great guy. He's also a nearly octogenarian obese man.
Quite impressive.
He probably shouldn't be out there in the 90-degree oppressive, humid heat. But God bless him. He did a great job running this tournament this weekend and last. But anyway, describing the world as I see it, it's fine. There's no judgment on Steve. Great guy. He comes all the way down the field, and I don't know what he thought was going to happen, but he talks to the umpire. He's like, so why wasn't the infield fly rule applied here? To get an explanation for himself. He's like, my associate out there and I agree that it's a judgment call, and we judge that that's not a routine play. It's like, all right. I mean, because it's a judgment call, there's like literally nothing we can do about it.
But is everything open to judgment? So they can decide.
Not everything, but that in particular is a judgment call. So it's not something that like
should bring to mind when in Chipper Jones's last game, when the infield fly rule was called in the outfield for some reason.
Right, there was like a fucking 180 foot infield fly rule called against Chipper Jones to end Chipper Jones's career. Disaster. Anyway. Finally, this might have gone on for.
It was a few minutes.
5 to 7 minutes.
It was like 5 minutes. It was very tense 5 minutes.
Right, and of course the kids are all just standing there.
Oh yeah, the conversation I wish so much that I could have overheard, because while this was all going on, sort of like Calvin at second base, Kid at first base, pitcher, and then the right fielder kind of all got together and were talking, and it was just like. What are they talking about? Like, what do they think they know, these little kids? They were just, like, talking. It was cute.
This goes on, like I said, for some time.
It was like 5 minutes.
Ultimately, it's 1-1. The bases are still loaded. There's still nobody out. Somebody from the other team's parents' side has yelled at our coach to get off the field, you big crybaby. Something to that
during
effect.
The 5 minutes?
Right. During the 5 minutes, somebody's like, get out of here. You stop crying, you big baby. Something like that. It's like, look, man, first of all, this guy is not the kind of guy that you want to say this to. Like, he is not, he's likely to take it personally.
He's got a big heart.
He heard it? Like, this is a...
Yeah,
audible?
it was heard. I heard it too.
I didn't hear it at all.
I heard.
But apparently the sound in this place is weird.
Okay.
Yeah. Anyway, it's an ugly moment, and I felt bad that the kids had to like stand around like idiots while all the grown-ups figured it out. But like it was a fully righteous cause by us. They fucked it up, and it's just the reality is what it is.
Can you play
Moving
under
on.
protest? Like they do sometimes.
I don't know what the formal protest situation is, but the result is the result ultimately. Yeah. I shit you not, Abe. The very next batter, 2 pitches later, hits a pop fly.
No way.
Over the first baseman's head.
No.
Very next pitch.
That lands in the exact same spot.
Exact same spot.
On the dirt. The exact.
No way.
Like, I could not find 2 marks next to each other is how close this was. It might have literally been the exact same spot on the field.
Did it register with the audience? Like, whoa.
It registered with all of us. We all knew what the fuck had just happened. So this one wasn't as high. This one, whereas the last one had a big, strong parabola. Like it was a very clearly a fly ball. This was much closer to a bloop or
Yes.
a pop or
Yes.
something like that.
It was the first one went way up high and then came down. This one arced over to the same spot.
Nothing at all. Nothing you could call a line drive, but
It was arced.
A bloop or a pop. And by the way, still could have been called, it could have been called infield fly rule, and the other team wouldn't have had anything to bitch about. It just would have been, I guess that could be. So at this point, my fellow coach, our head coach, is in no position to go talk to the umpire because he will get himself tossed, right?
Yeah.
Like it will be ugly. And so he's not moving. He's furious. He cannot move. So I walk out of the dugout and I call time. I'm like, hang on. So can we get an explanation on why the infield fly rule wasn't applied on this play? And he goes, judgment call. That one wasn't really a fly ball, more of a liner than the last one. And I said, okay, so the last one was a fly ball on the infield then? I just wanted to clear that up. And then I turned around and went back to the dugout. And he just, by the way, the umpire just like stares me down. I get no response out of that because obviously it's a shit-eating thing of me to say, but it's also like 1,000% true because he has now just said the thing that I needed him to say to prove that he was fucking wrong 5 minutes ago about the previous call.
Right.
Like to justify the non-call in this second moment, which like as though it were written by a stupid screenwriter, is like how unlikely is it that the exact same thing happens within the very next pitch or two?
Yeah, that's amazing.
Right.
Immediately.
And like to get him to then basically admit how he'd fucked it up just a moment ago.
One pitch ago.
To justify his failure to call it this time was exactly what I wanted and needed in that moment.
Did you show restraint there? Were you like want to say more, or you just left it? I just want to extract the information I need, and I'm gonna just.
Well, one of the other coaches says to me, "Well, you're not going to get this one if we didn't get the last one." I was like, "Yeah, I know. I wanted to prove. I want like that. That's the point.
Yeah,
I wanted
you don't
to prove
know me
the point."
well, but I am very difficult. So
anyway,
I need to feel good about it.
So then we're in the same situation. Now it's 2-1. They've taken a lead on these bogus back-to-back non-infield fly rule calls, and still nobody out. And then the wheels just fucking come off. I think we walk the next kid, and
There were walks
it's
and
3-1. Then there's another big-time hit because this is a good team, and so they got a couple of hits in a row with the bases loaded, and they end up going up 8-1, and that's just it. Then we come up against their
professional baseball pitcher.
Right. They're the best kid in the tournament. The kid who can get up there and zip it in there at 65 miles an hour, and we don't stand a chance. And it was just a bummer. Like, and it was obvious whether it was 2-1 or 8-1, like they had seized, like I said earlier, our foot was on their throats, and then all of a sudden we had no life left. It just flips just in a second like that.
Did the kids took all of this, the whole thing in stride? Like they weren't like overly.
They were sad.
I mean, they were sad.
Well,
they were bummed, and they thought that, especially because after the first game that we played against these guys, like I was saying about that 13-run first inning, and I'm being dead serious. We hit the ball in the bottom of the first. We didn't score any runs. We didn't have any hits, but we hit the ball harder than them 3 times than they did in the entire first inning. So like.
Just bad luck.
It was just awful luck. We hit 3 legit, like could be a double if it doesn't get hit right at a guy over and over again. And the ball was hit harder by us in the first inning than it was by them in the entire first inning, even though they had like fucking 8 hits or something.
Also,
it was just bad luck. And like
pitcher who's a good, he on the other team, when he's not pitching, he's playing shortstop. So anything that goes anywhere near him, that's it. Like, you're out because he can get to all of them and then get that ball to wherever he needs to get it to because he's just got an arm.
Right. And like, whatever. So our kids were already in a position where, like, they recognized that first game was not a true representation of what we could do against this team. And then for this to happen, it's like, I don't know. It just feels bad. Like you just feel bad for them because we played we played a much better game than they did, with the exception of that one very goofy, out of control inning that wasn't their fault at all.
Was there a after an action report kind of thing, like at the end where you talk to the kids about what just happened?
Yeah, of course. And like we try not to go in. You don't try to allow them to like blame circumstances beyond their control, because like also that's not a lesson that you want to teach. You're not going to teach them that it's not fair.
Right.
So we're like super proud of you. You battled all the way through. You had them until you didn't, and like that's just reality. Sometimes you go out and you're they all knew that's a better team than we are, and it didn't matter for 5 innings. We were hanging with them, and we were going to beat them until rather suddenly we weren't, and they should be proud of themselves. And that was
And I think
what
they
it
were.
came down to.
I
They were,
left and came back, and everyone was in a better mood about an hour later.
Oh, good.
Like, including Bob.
Yeah, it was fine. And ultimately, and I said this to my fellow coach here this morning, there's 2 kinds of Little League coaches. I mean, not to get stupid about it.
Oh, yeah?
But so there's, we played all of our kids. We made sure that all 12 of our kids got, there's no requirement that they get defensive playing time, but they all played in every single one of the games. And because of the way mandatory play works, because they're all batting, they don't have to be on defense. Everybody has to bat, but not everybody has to go in the field to play.
Everybody has to bat unless magically your worst hitter is injured.
Right, so that's what I'm getting at here. So we played everybody. Like we even sent out in that disastrous 5th inning, we sent out a non-ideal defensive alignment in our outfield because we'd gone 4 innings with the same 3 kids on the bench. That's just what we had done. It was working, and we didn't want to mess with it. And then finally, it was like, we got to get these kids in. Where can we put them? And by the way, you can never hide them. The ball will always find you. It's fucking...
It's crazy how that works, yeah.
It's the golden rule here. It's inviolable. And so, of course, in that inning, the kid that we put in at third base missed a throw to third base that would have easily gotten, I think, the second out of the inning. Like he lets it go by instead of making the easy catch and tag on a base runner. And then also in that inning, the kid that we put in left field, a ball gets hit, like probably their best hit of the game, gets hit over our left fielder's head. But it wasn't smoked. It was just sort of popped out there. And the problem with a ball that's hit over any outfielder's head at this level is like even the best of them, that's a 50-50 ball. Like what looks, again, a routine play. It is really hard to be 150 feet from where this ball was hit, to watch it go into the air, know that it's over your head, and then position yourself correctly, moving back and make the catch. And he didn't do it. He took 2 big steps in before he realized that it was going over his head. He starts to retreat. He throws his glove up, and it goes over his head by about 6 inches. And the kid that we had in there before is more likely to have made that play. Still, it's a 50-50 play, even for a good Little League outfielder, right? And it's probably more like a 30-70 play for the kid that we had in there. And so, like, my coaches are like beating ourselves up about not having the strongest possible defense out there. But what I said to him is like, look, you can either live with the fact that we play all of our kids, and like that kid showed up to every fucking practice. Yeah. He worked his ass off just as hard as everybody else on the field. He doesn't deserve to sit on the bench for 6 innings and watch his buddies try to play baseball without him, right? Like, put him out there, let him do his best, and the cards will fall where they may. And by the way, it's those sorts of kids who surprise the shit out of you in big moments and make plays that you weren't expecting. Right. It happens a dozen times a year. So, whatever. To me, you'd rather live with yourself with that being the outcome than be the asshole coach who, I get the lineup for this team. And by the way, like again, you can choose to live your life believing the absolute worst about everybody in the world, or believing to give people the benefit of the doubt, right? Like, and I tend to want to give human beings the benefit of the doubt, but we get the lineup for them. And we played them earlier in the week. And there's one kid on this list who they say is an excused absence, right? Because you have 12 kids on the team. They're all supposed to play. But, of course, it's fucking Little League Baseball. The mom goes on vacation or whatever. Like that.
Yeah, things happen.
Not everybody can make every game. But I look at the name, I'm like, huh. And then I look at my scorebook that I kept for the previous game, and I'm going down the list. Every kid in their lineup had 2 hits against us, except for one. One kid struck out twice. And it's the kid who struck out twice who's curiously has the excused absence
But at least
today.
he's not there the whole game, not like Culpepper.
Right. So there's that way of handling a situation where it's like, it's a little suspicious that the kid who had the terrible game all of a sudden can't show up to the elimination tournament. Like that's awfully convenient. And then there's this other team where we're watching the championship game today, and it's between the team that beat us and this annoying-ass team from Culpeper who...
I have to tell you about Culpeper for a second as a place.
Okay.
This is a place that when I was growing up, it's about an hour south of D.C., an hour north of Charlottesville.
Okay.
This is a place that until 20 years ago was rural nothing. And now it's like considered Northern Virginia, which it's not, but it's like, it's these fucking new money bullshit. What can I compare it to?
It's suburban sprawl. It's
exurban.
Yeah.
It's people.
It's people in Cumming, Georgia,
Thank you.
after
Yes.
Georgia 400
Right.
comes in, being like, we're Atlanta now.
Yeah. Their fan base, which I've had experience with just this one time, the vibe that I got was South Carolina fans. Just this weird, like, what do you have money? Why are you so trashy? What's that
Yeah.
about?
So their coaches are like, they're these big, like,
They're like football players.
what it is, they're like a fucking annoying softball team. They're like, everybody's always
Constantly
chanting. They have different chants for different parts of every fucking at bat. They're screaming as the pitcher's going into his windup, and like that's just shitty. We're talking about 9 and 10-year-old kids here,
Children.
and then after the ball is hit, their coach. So oftentimes you're watching a Little League game and a ball gets hit and a coach, me for example, will yell, fucking run. Like I won't
You
say
don't
fucking,
say fucking.
but like, because he's just standing there in a box. It's like, go, run. Like that sort of shit,
Yeah.
right? But you're clearly yelling at your team, like, or you're saying like, run through the bag, or like, okay, round the bag here. Watch
You're
the throw. Watch the
coaching.
throw. I'm coaching, right? I'm coaching. This other guy, their first base coach, would just like a savage yell anytime a ball was hit in play, and it's directed at the defense. Like it's like clearly directed at the defense to try to psych them out as they're just making routine baseball plays, which is just like incredibly shitty of you to do.
No one calls them out on it.
Right. So like, what are you gonna like?
What do you call?
Yeah.
What do you call? You can say something.
Don't yell.
So eventually,
I know what you're doing.
Eventually
Say that. I know what you're
right.
doing.
We know what you're up to, guy. Eventually, we get to the point where they finally get warned for screaming during the pitcher's windup, where they're told, like,
Oh, good.
tone it down while the pitcher is actually going into his windup, you assholes. And they sort of do, but they bring it right up to it, right? Like they're very much clearly still pushing the envelope. And this is you feel bad for being mad at the kids because like they've clearly been coached to do this. Like they believe that it is to their competitive advantage to have their kids screaming like banshees on the bench as the pitcher is trying to throw
but their
the
moms
baseball.
all come with shirts with like baseball printed onto the front of it and their kid's name and number on the back of it, and a hat that says baseball mom, and another t-shirt that says pitches be crazy. So like I have a feeling the kids aren't that great either.
Yeah.
Like I said, South Carolina fan base.
Anyway, and they do this. Like they keep doing the who are we? Culpepper. Who are we? Culpepper. Who
it's
are
weird.
we? It's like
very
they
weird.
do the who are we chant like 1,000 times.
This is the team against which we won that great game that we played. This was against that team.
Oh, okay.
Right. So this is the team that we beat to start the entire tournament off with. Anyway, they make it to the championship game.
Boo.
Oh, no, not the champion. The semifinal game against
boo.
Louisa. And because we're losers, I was deeply invested in the outcome of this tournament, even though we weren't in it any longer. So we stuck around and watched the other semifinal game and then also watched the final today. Culpeper against Louisa yesterday. And coming up in the 6th inning.
Yeah, last inning.
In the last inning.
They were down by a little.
They were down by a few runs. They needed to rally to win the game. There's 2 outs. The person who was scheduled to hit 5th in that inning was one of their weak hitters. Somebody who hadn't produced anything over the course of the last couple days. And mysteriously, he has a hand injury and can't bat in that position. And so they go to the next kid who is one of their more productive players. And so with 2 outs at the end of your season, you can be the coach who encourages your worst batter or one of your worst batters to go up there and give it his fucking best. Or you can tell him to play up the fact that his hand really hurts and he can't go out there. And so therefore he gets skipped without penalty in the lineup because it's fucking Little League baseball. Right. They're not going to call it an automatic out. And instead the next kid, it's just next kid up sort of situation. And by the way, righteously so, that kid strikes out to end the game. And you feel bad. I do. I even feel bad saying it now, that kid righteously struck out to end the game. But if there's any amount of truth to the fact that these coaches were manipulating the batting order in order to make it so that kid didn't potentially end the season for them, then it's so profoundly shitty. And I know that they're not self-reflective enough for it to actually bother them in the way that I wish it bothered them when they lay in bed at night.
This is not going to bother them at all. They can easily explain this away. I'm doing the best for the team. Blah. It's an easy way to get around. And
so that's what I said to you can either be a guy who feels bad about the fact that you got all your kids on the field. Like, if that's what you have to live with, fine. At least you don't have to live with the fact that you're that asshole who's doing that sort of thing. Anyway, they ended up losing that game, and then as I said, the team that beat us ends up winning the whole thing this afternoon. So,
good for them.
It was fun.
Yeah, good for them. And ultimately, though I was sort of hoping that the other team would win, it's best for everybody that this kid gets to keep playing baseball this summer. The
more eyes that see him, the better.
This team will go as far as this little 10-year-old can take him, and that's for the best. And yeah, what is that? Fucking 45 minutes about
that's fine.
Little League
it's
baseball.
Pleasant.
Jesus Christ.
It's pleasant. Now we can talk about this bullshit.
We didn't mention that Titan submersible that went down last week.
No. We're not going to.
This is a very...
No, I will keep talking until you change the subject, Bob.
Bullshit.
You, okay?
I know. Right. No, I know.
All right, you're making me do this.
I know that we have a quick 2 sentences. Lori's raised a hand.
Move along.
A 2-sentence speech here about what's going on. Everybody knows the story. It sort of dominated the news cycle for a while. We don't have to recap it. Abe,
yes.
You are... Picture yourself this. You're a single man, no kids, but way more money. IRS pays way better than it currently does. Huge piles of disposable income. And you're now a major thrill seeker, right? You are an adventurous type.
A lot of changes for Abe.
you seek death-defying thrills out there in the world. And putting myself in that position, right? Huge piles of disposable money, so much money that you won't miss $250,000 if you want to spend it, and also being someone who likes to death defy in interesting ways. There's still zero chance that I'm putting myself in a submersible tin can that then sinks to the bottom of the ocean in order to look out 8-inch around porthole at the Titanic wreckage, and then push a button that then drops weights and allows you to ascend to. You please stop. with the emojis, Lori.
New feature.
Anyway, do you see what I'm saying here? Is that the last place on earth that I would be with an endless supply of money and also an endless appetite for death-defying thrills and chills is the bottom of the fucking ocean, to look at something out of a small porthole window that I can see in full HD glory on my, presumably I have a home theater system that is quite impressive. Right. I can watch all of James Cameron's movies and his,
in particular,
and
the
his,
Titanic one.
His documentary movie as well, about the where he went down to the bottom of the various trenches in the various oceans of the world. What is this about a person who thinks this is what they want to do with their time and money and death-defying experiences? I don't get it at all.
It's been 2 minutes.
Yeah. I don't get it either, because I would neither want to go in space or the bottom of the ocean, especially with those weirdo animals that are also live there. But I definitely would not want to do that. I mean, you're looking at some wreckage. Like, there's no action. At least in space, you can look down and see, oh, look at that ball of blue. Like that. But I don't get this thing at all. Why you
right.
It
has no appeal for me whatsoever. And I'm not just saying that because they're all dead now.
Okay, speaking of unspeakable wealth, moving to the thing. It's a good segue.
It is actually a good segue, because if you have $250,000 to spend on a ticket, so here's the way to set this up, because Abe, I know that you will disagree with the thesis that Peter Singer raises in his article, which, by the way, this will be about a conversation we're having about a piece from the New York Times Magazine from 1999 called "The Singer Solution to World Poverty." Peter Singer is one of I think he's still alive, actually, but he's one of the 20th century's sort of more famous modern philosophers. He's a utilitarian type.
They believe something.
Utilitarians?
Yeah, utilitarians do. It's about the greater good, and also, see why school doesn't work?
I'm gonna allow Lori's definition of utilitarianism to be what we're working with there. He wrote a piece called "The Singer Solution to World Poverty." It will be in the show notes. I'll make sure it's a gift article so everyone can read it. It's my gift to you. He wrote about how he can solve the world's poverty problems, and what his solution or what his recommendation would be to anyone with $250,000 in such wild
consequences of our actions. I found it.
That's right. He's a strict consequentialist, right? He believes that because that is very clearly a luxury good, right? This trip to the bottom of the ocean to see a long lost Titanic wreck. That is an immoral act. That is an immoral waste of your money. So, Abe, why is Peter Singer wrong to suggest that it is, in fact, a desperately immoral thing to do to spend $250,000 to go down to the bottom of the ocean, when instead, for a mere $250 or what have you, you could literally save the life of a toddler in Somalia or other long, awful places in the world where it's difficult to get a person from infancy to being a 6 or 7 year old kid. And if you can get them to being a 6 or 7 year old kid, their chances of surviving and thriving, relatively speaking, into adulthood are much increased, right? So if you can just get them through those first few early years with an intervention as simple as just a few $100s, how is it that it is at all morally acceptable to instead spend $250,000 on a ticket to the bottom of the ocean where you're going to die?
So in the article, he was talking about like this scenario. I think the character's name was Bob, right? Like Bob had the Bugatti.
Yeah, he has a car.
And he really likes his Bugatti. It's worth a lot of money. The value keeps going up. And he's presented with this choice where like some kid's going to get run over by a train. He could. First
of all, I want to interrupt you here. This is the dumbest fucking hypothetical, because nobody has a car that appreciates in value over the long term. That's not a thing. Like, there's Bob in this example is treating his Bugatti as a car that is it's where he's poured all of his investment retirement income into.
Right.
He hopes to one day, he keeps it because he likes it, and then one day he's going to sell it and live off the income from having sold this classic car.
Right.
That's not how anything
Also,
works, Peter.
Yeah, and to explain away like a very big like plot hole, this Bugatti, for some reason they're not able to insure it for whatever reason, because then
Right.
basically it's like this would be a loss, like he would suffer a
Well,
great loss.
I mean, for the game to work,
Yes,
you have
you
to
have-
just
right.
close that. Like, don't worry about it. Here's money.
Right.
Like,
But usually,
Bob also has
thought
to be
experiment over.
such a dummy that he parks it on the fucking railroad
right.
tracks.
Yeah,
I think I'll just leave my fucking my entire retirement investment vehicle, literally, on the railroad tracks.
Yeah, it's a very clunky setup to like a very obvious. You want to know. Okay, this is the situation. Either save your hide or like help somebody, or like in this case, I guess the Bugatti is supposed to be some inconsiderate amount. I mean, if it was like,
yes,
right,
it's supposed to be
it's such a big expense.
a $30 dinner, or
Right.
I mean, so it's funny because before I ever read this, and I feel like we haven't introduced it, but whatever. I used to get every Christmas when I went Christmas shopping. My first stop was to Starbucks to get an eggnog latte, and they're like $5-6, and then in the same day, I like learned how many calories someone from an impoverished country consumes in a week, and also separate fact of like they live on the cost of my latte for a month. And so I stopped buying the lattes. I did not start donating money, but I was like, I can't buy eggnog lattes anymore. I can make them at home,
Right.
but I don't do that anymore because it feels yucky.
Right.
Right, because the eggnog latte has more calories in it than the sad gas babies.
Yeah. Like it could literally, that eggnog latte could feed a child for a week 2 times.
Right.
1 in the cost of it and 2 in the calories of it.
Right.
Right.
But what I find interesting is that the motivations for people is generally like a self-serving thing. People seek to feel like they're a better person than wherever they actually are, right? So like I think they referenced a movie that I never heard of where basically like for like $1,000 the lead character was to hand over a 9-year-old homeless kid to somebody, and under the belief of something innocent, and it turns out actually they were gonna they're gonna take all his organs and kill him and do whatever.
Right. It's about a Brazilian movie called Central Station, and the character scoops up a 9-year-old from like the city center where there's a bunch of orphans and delivers them to a rich couple out in the suburbs under the belief that they're going to be adopted. And then her friend is like,
"Oh no,
hey, you really believe that?
Yeah.
You really believe that adoption shit?" Because I heard on Alex Jones the other day about how all the 9-year-olds are being taken out to the suburbs to have their organs harvested, and that's what's really going on there. And the idea is that this character is now going to work to try to reclaim the child from the rich couple that she delivered them to make sure that the organs aren't being harvested from it.
And put themselves at considerable risk, right? Like they have to go back and do this. And as the audience, I think the argument they're getting at is the audience, you are expecting them to do that. Like this would be a bad person if they were like, got that wrong, and then you move on with your life, right? Like I got a TV,
Right.
Fuck that kid, right? Like everybody would be critical of that character. They would hate that character, and they're arguing like you're in a way that character in other ways. Like you don't need to go to dinner. You could give $200 to some cause, and and he gives like UNICEF's number or whatever. Like you could do this. Like you could do this, and you're not.
Right, you could do it right now.
Right.
Almost certainly, anyone who's reading this article in the New York Times in 1999, you have $250 at your ready disposal that you're going to waste, even if you don't have it in your checking account.
It's saying like you don't even need that much money.
Right.
Just like any money.
Right. Even if you don't have it in your checking account right now, we can play the game where you're going to go out to dinner twice in the next month, right?
Right.
Or you're going to spend your money on your cable bill, or you're going to spend your money on whatever it is that you spend your money on that is beyond your actual existential needs in terms of your survival, and that's money that could be better spent ensuring the survival of someone who exists outside of the realm of your current daily experience.
Right, and I guess this is where like my disagreement with this whole concept is, because my thinking is that making people feel bad about themselves is not a very persuasive way to deal with people, right? So they're gonna, like, it's not like persuasive to the, oh yeah, you're right. Well, silly me, I've been eating out this whole week. I didn't need to do that. I can make a sandwich at home. Like that, people are not going to receive it in that way, right? So like,
hey, do you really need that sandwich with 2 pieces of bread though? Because if you did it on, would you not survive with it on 1 piece of bread?
Right.
And by the way, you don't really need that mayo because that's just.
But also, why is he wrong? Like, I just feel that's why I didn't.
Right,
I didn't want to do this one because I feel shitty.
Right. We should set this up also in terms of how this is Lori's assignment, because because I'm
studying accounting, obviously.
Right, this is part of her ethics class, and she had 3 different options to write about. And
one was really dumb. It was like, someone wrote a code, and then they got a new job, and the new job wanted them to write a code for them, so they just use the same code, and I just like, ugh, I don't care.
Right.
I don't care about this.
The other option was to watch an old televised debate from the late 90s, early 2000. It was 2007, maybe. I don't know. It was
Big Suit Jake Tapper.
Oddly enough, it was Jake Tapper in a big suit.
What is it? Like ABC?
Yeah, from the ABC days, and he looked like the 2003 NBA draft class that goes around from time to time. It wasn't quite that dramatic because of course
he's not as big as they are.
He's not as big as they are, and also he's not a fucking basketball player. Yeah. So like those guys comically wore much comically oversized suits.
I'm surprised the tailor industry survived those years, because there was none of that. It was just like.
Right, no adjustment needed. I'm just going to go 2 sizes up and be good with it. Anyway, it was amusing to see Tapper, a youngish Jake Tapper, hosting this thing, and fucking that asshole Paul Krugman was on the panel too. Anyway, you had to watch this big performative, like, look, we've gathered all of America's greatest minds of business and politics and journalism to discuss these thorny ethical questions and listen to all these smart people talk their way through this shit. And each one of them was an hour long. And it's one of those sneaky assignments that you would get in school where it's like you could just watch the video and then respond to the video. Right. And you're like, ooh, videos are better than reading. I'll do the video one. But also, what always happens with that is like it's sneakily like 10 times as much work.
The problem, I have said many times, I have conversations with people all day. My brain is now conditioned to respond way better to that. Yeah. Like I learn a lot more from interaction rather than words on a page. Yeah. But I would have to watch all of them, or there are like 10 to choose from. And the assignment doesn't make it super exactly clear what it wants from me, and then I got further clarification of what it wanted from me, and it made it seem harder to try to find one conversation when this one's just here.
Right. So it's like, okay, watch this talk between all of these people, and
it
then
made it like too many choices.
Apply something that apply one of Kant's arguments about ethics to something fucking Paul Krugman said. Right. It's like, oh God, now I have to go through and like because it's not written. There's no transcript, so it's not like you can refer to.
That's not the problem for me.
No, I know, but that's the thing is like you basically have to transcribe an hour of goddamn audio just so that you can then respond to it. Whereas this is just a 2,000-word essay that you can read and constantly refer to.
Only 500 words that I'm supposed to write. Like not supposed to. I'm allowed to write way more. But the minimum is 500 words, which is like nothing.
That's no amount of words. That's me clearing my fucking
It's
throat.
going to be more.
That's
yeah,
like,
you.
That's like 2.5 sentences of a rant of mine.
It's like one sentence for you.
Yeah.
You're the worst.
Anyway, so I convinced her that the best thing to do is to read the Singer essay here and then respond to that.
It just makes me feel bad about myself because my reaction is, yeah,
Right.
he's right. I'm shit.
But the thing, people seek to feel better about themselves. So if you look at the audience that's watching this, the character who's supposed to go back and like put themselves in harm's way to save the kid, they stand in judgment of her to feel better about themselves, right? It's very self-serving, right? The whole thing is the actual thing that they're criticizing, the fact that they sent a kid up to their death, is a secondary thing. Like the primary thing is to feel better about themselves. People are just continually going to seek doing that. So like you have to kind of take that into consideration.
Your moral intuition is that the point of the thought experiment is that your moral intuition is that it is wrong to sell a child for $1,000 who's then going to be killed, right? Like, and even if you raise it to $10,000, and oddly enough, your moral intuition, the higher the amount of money gets, it becomes more repulsive almost, right? Like, so you wouldn't sell a kid for $1,000, but also it would feel way grosser to sell a kid for $1 million in some way, right? Like somehow that's even fucking worse. Like, not that they're going to torture them anymore or less because of the money difference.
Profiting off of that. It's bad enough it's happening. You're making money off it.
Right.
And
the $1,000 will spend quick.
Right.
And it's like on to the next one.
Yeah.
With the $1 million, it's like you're like looking at all of the bounty that you have. Like every time you take a bite of that really nice piece of sushi or whatever that you're spending your $1 million on, it's like, oh, yep, there's that kid's kidney I'm chewing on now,
but
I guess.
Like, I need to write this essay. So I don't see an argument against it. I see what Abe is saying, where it's not a good incentive. Like if I'm trying to convince people.
The problem is that it's an infinite, if you take it seriously, it becomes utterly unsustainable. And so what his actual argument is that some percentage of people will give some small percentage of their wealth, this $250, that will have. So from Peter Singer's perspective, he is compelled to write this because he believes that even if only 1 in 100 people who were to read this essay were to give $1,000 or something, then all of a sudden that much more money is being spent on saving lives. And so he has done the ethical thing, even if 99 out of 100 people ultimately don't. Yeah. So you could look at it from that, but to take it seriously would be the utter unraveling of the global economy, right? Like,
okay, but maybe that would be good.
Right. So then, but to what end then? Because then, if you can raise the standard of living of the most impoverished parts of the world up from a child mortality rate of 100 out of every 100,000 kids, like I don't know what the numbers don't matter. But if you can raise the relative level of general affluence of X country from third world into the second world by eliminating the excess in the first world, you will have robbed the first world of the engine that produces excess wealth that then raises the third world out of poverty, right?
Are you saying it would be like diminishing returns?
Ultimately, yeah, it is a game of diminishing returns that ends with a belief that maybe we shouldn't have all of this affluence in the world at all, that we would be better off not living in an industrialized modern society because there are such disparities from one group to the next. If the ultimate issue is we have all of this affluence and they do not, and therefore the balance is off, and we need to affect that balance in a meaningful way, ultimately you end in a situation where, I mean, not that everything is zero sum necessarily, but doesn't it ultimately lead you to the conclusion that affluence itself is bad.
Yeah.
That any stratification whatsoever is morally unacceptable.
Well, also, I mean, is this excess or accumulation of wealth does that result in the other half or most of the other people suffering? Like, is it on the backs of the other people? Like, is there a relationship between
It is, because all our clothes are made in fucking sweatshops.
I mean, in some meaningful way, you can find those sorts of connections and say, we have benefited from, like Lori says, sweatshop labor or something.
People who made this computer.
Yeah, even like
this little dongle in my hand that I'm playing with.
These fancy, like environmentally friendly cars there's like some mineral that kids in like Africa are pulling from the ground.
Yeah, they're mining.
Right? So it's like you're feeling well.
The lithium mines in Congo or wherever they are.
So people are like feeling, we're doing great things about the environment, but then it's like it comes on the backs of.
Okay, but what also follows from Singer's argument is a lot of this effective altruism stuff, right?
Yeah.
So I don't think that Singer in particular is one of these guys who's super concerned about
earn to give
the future.
Like
right, so there's the earn to give people, and then there's also like Sam Bankman-Fried, that crypto scammer guy, was super into worrying about future generations rather than donating $250 to try to make sure that some Ethiopian kid makes it from the age of 18 months to 7 years old. He would say that $250 is better spent worrying about the 25 billion people who are to be born over the course of the next 35 years or whatever, right? Like they're concerned. Where this ultimately leads is we are so severely indebted to future generations, much more so than we are to ourselves or to anyone here, in important ways, which it gets it immediately becomes like super big brained, right? Like
for you, it sure does.
No, just in that meme way where it's right, the big exploding brain meme that is frequently deployed in amusing ways, but like the idea, like I could give right here. Obviously, I'm doing a great job of explaining it, but like I could eat this bowl of rice and it would be good, and I would be, and that's the normal brain, right? Or I could give the bowl of rice to the homeless guy who would otherwise go hungry, and that's the slightly more neurons are firing. And then there's the big giant brain that's like, I could plant the rice and the rice could grow and it could feed 40 fucking billion Chinese 50 years from now. Right. And that's supposed and the idea that we're supposed to worry about that sort of thing, or that we can be expected to take on that level of concern for people who exist outside of our experience is very silly. And it's counter to your experience.
But the question I have to answer, this isn't helping. It says, give an account of what Singer's main claim is and his arguments to support it. That I got. Do you agree? My answer is yes. I can't get out of it. I can lie, but he's right. Why or why not? 'Cause I'm shit? And then apply one of the ethical theories we've studied to derive a conclusion, which, okay, now I'm even less sure. Give a clear statement of your view along with two original arguments. And here I am with two people. So back to that.
What I think that I'm sort of responding appropriately here, which is that
write it down.
It is unreasonable for anyone to expect me to live as Jesus Christ lived, essentially, which is what Singer is demanding of us, that we should impoverish ourselves in the hopes that first of all, and he acknowledges this in the context of in the text of the essay, where he says, a lot of people will say, well, I don't know how effective my $250 is going to be. And he's like, well, I accounted for all of that. Don't worry. I did all the math. And ultimately, if you give this money to UNICEF, it will do more harm than good. And it will do more good than your enjoyment, your guilty, awful enjoyment of that fancy dinner that you're going to go out for is going to bring you.
But how is he wrong? I understand his approach isn't right. But the theory seems right.
So this utilitarian philosopher thinking, like the definition that they have here, as you mentioned earlier, Lori, is one who judges whether acts are right or wrong by their consequence or just the outcome or whatever, right? So, like, there are many ways to persuade people to give money. This is one of the most ineffective ways to do that. Like,
but he's not saying persuade people to give money. He's saying give money.
Right.
That is.
But
that's the
so
action.
Why is it wrong? Why is it always wrong? Singer would say it's always wrong for you to go to the grocery store and spend more money than you need to spend to survive when you could take that excess and send it to somebody who actually needs it.
I mean, the only so the reason, if there's a why isn't it always wrong, it's because it makes me happy.
Right, but the thing
that I like it.
Right, but that's the thing. So, like, the utility of the argument, them presenting those facts, like, why do you need to do this, like, when you don't actually need to do this thing, is for them to agree with you, to say you're right. But people are not going to do that if you make the argument that way. I think that the approach is actually undermining what they actually want, which is as many people to give $200, and this is not the way to do it.
Abe, what did you spend on that fancy wall art that's hanging behind you on that wall there?
I don't know.
$50?
Yeah, let's say $50, yes.
Let's say $50. So you had $50 to spend on that fucking wall art, which means nothing to you, right? You did it because of peer pressure.
Yeah,
you felt
people think
bad.
I'm a serial killer because I don't have any stupid fucking art on my wall. Some bullshit.
Right. So the utility of that piece of beautiful art that's hanging on your wall back there is that it makes your friends less likely to call you a serial killer in the future.
Yes. And that's important to me.
And that's important to you.
The serial killer.
But if that $50 could have saved a life in Somalia, wouldn't it have been wrong of you to spend that $50 in that way?
Right. No.
And because this is a consequentialist argument, he's naturally set himself up to be the victor here, which is the belief that we have taken on faith that $50 will have saved a life, right? And that it will have done more good in the saving of that life than it is simply recycled back into the American economy, right? Which is that you went to fucking Pier 1 or wherever it is that you spent your $50. You went to Kohl's, and that's what was there.
I think it's homegrown.
Okay, whatever. You spent your money there. Somebody works there, presumably, and then there's an HR department at that company because somebody fucking works there. And then also there's a payroll department, and fucking the money spins around and the economy goes around.
A lot. Yeah, I mean, I'm holding this whole thing up.
I mean, I talk all the time about how my clients' money stops at me.
Yeah.
Like, I don't then... I mean, yeah, we eat food and stuff, but, like, I don't employ anyone.
Right.
Right. Well, you've got fucking 4 dependents.
I know.
3 people and a dog.
Why are my dependents more important than the dependents in Somalia?
Because they're your...
Because they're your dependents, right? I mean, it's just the fact of the matter. And, like, I used to give Lori sort of a hard time about the fact that her clients spend just what is an obscene amount of money on personal upkeep. Like, and it's not an amount of money. Like, if I did not have Lori to give me truly next level professional haircuts that she gives me, I wouldn't go spend $60 on a men's haircut.
Right.
I would
52 plus tip is what he's referring to.
Right. I would go to... I would either have one of those razors that I can do it myself, right? I would give myself bad haircuts at home, or I would go to Supercuts or whatever.
Super Great Clips Cuts.
Whatever barber place is handy, and give $8 plus tip to whoever was behind the chair that day to cut my hair. And part of it is, in fact, a moral impulse of mine that I believe that it would be wrong in the same way as we started the show tonight not discussing the ice creams that we had in our hands, right? So Lori got a Haagen-Dazs bar out of the freezer
from Christmas, which was 6 months ago.
that I think I bought it in January because
no,
listen, because it went on sale after Christmas.
January
because it was
also 6 months ago.
Like a candy cane bark Haagen-Dazs bar where it's got like the peppermint candy
It's really good.
in the chocolate around the delicious vanilla ice cream in the middle. Yeah, delicious, but we didn't make our way through it, right? So Lori had one still in the freezer some 6 months later. She gets it out tonight. She has a bite, and she's not going to eat it because it's got freezer burn all over it. Now I'm like, well, it's just ice crystals, and it's still a delicious Haagen-Dazs ice cream bar.
It was after he was giving me shit for eating it and not letting him eat it.
I wasn't giving you shit. I wasn't going to eat the Haagen-Dazs bar. Happy for Lori to eat it. But then she all of a sudden, it was going to go to waste. Yeah. She didn't want to eat it anymore. I'm like, well, it is worse for it to go to waste than it is for me to eat it, even though I've taken...
To whom?
I've taken the position that it would be bad for me to eat the Haagen-Dazs bar because it is not in keeping with my current goals, right? So I don't want to eat the Haagen-Dazs bar because I want to be healthy. But further, I don't want to waste the Haagen-Dazs bar because to me that's ultimately it's calories, and I can turn that calories into energy. More likely, of course, it turns into stubborn belly fat, which is a phrase that I've heard on on the TV infomercials for many years. It is incredibly stubborn belly fat. I am the definition of a person with stubborn belly fat. No matter what I've done my whole life, stubborn belly fat sticks around.
You've never talked to a nutritionist.
Ultimately, I'm sitting here holding a melting, frozen Haagen-Dazs bar
with
in my hand, trying to decide.
In between the ice cream and the chocolate. So there was freezer burn on the outside, which I was willing to forgive. But then in the you have the ice cream and then it's dipped in chocolate. Right. So between the ice cream and the chocolate was a layer of ice crystals, which was gross.
It's all just ice crystals. It's all the way down. I took a bite. It was all ice crystals all the way down. The point is that I had a moral dilemma on my hands entirely created by myself because I believe I've somehow convinced myself that there's a moral dimension to the eating of the ice cream bar.
And the having of the plastic bags in the closet.
And the moral dimension to putting the ice cream bar in the sink and simply letting it melt down the drain, which clearly there really shouldn't be one. And that's ultimately where I come down to with Singer is like, yes, we can create a moral dimension to every little aspect of our lives, but I don't actually think that most of these actions have moral components in a way that matters, right? So you can be an ostentatious haver of great wealth who displays their wealth in disgusting ways. And like Eric Schmidt is the Google guy who's no longer with Google, but he bought a boat on clearance that was like, it was captured by the Danes or something. Like it's at some port somewhere, and it's a Russian oligarch's giant yacht, and so they were selling it on the cheap, and on the cheap is like I don't even remember the number, but it's like fucking tens of millions of dollars, right? Many tens of millions of dollars that he bought this boat at auction. And like in some regard, that's fucking gross. Yes. Like Jeff Bezos has got that fucking yacht, and it's got a bad mermaid carving of his girlfriend on the front of it, and he spent like fucking $500 million on it or something. And like that's fucking awful. Right. And like there are people who die every day, and he's out here spending $1 billion fucking dollars on a stupid boat that he's going to spend 40 days a year on, and the rest of the time. But at the same time, he's employing like a whole fucking crew of hundreds all of the time. To say nothing of the fact that it was built by many hundreds of people, right? And so and that's what makes the fucking world go round. So yeah, we can sneer at the filthy rich at the way that they choose to spend their money, but ultimately we have to take the moral dimension out of a lot of the things that we do, rather than piling more morality into it. We just accept.
So the argument has to be that
there isn't a moral dimension to existing in the world as it is, right?
Okay, but which philosopher said that?
To some extent, we are products of the world that we are born into, and we can.
But none of the philosophers I read this semester said that.
Yeah, we can work at the edges to do what we can to make the world a better place, but fundamentally, you cannot live as a pauper for any extended period of time without making yourself useless to the people that you aim to help, right? Like at some point, you can't work yourself to the bone for 60 fucking years, sending every single penny that you make off to the poorest people in the world. You're a tiny little drop in a constantly growing bucket, to say nothing of the fact that if every goddamn, and this is gross, but if every goddamn kid who was meant to die makes it out of goddamn childhood, you know what notoriously happens when poor people make it out of fucking childhood? Abe, answer the goddamn question, you coward.
A part of this segment.
Answer the question.
You're going down alone.
Apply one of the ethical theories we have studied this term to derive a conclusion.
They reproduce, is what they do. And they make more poor goddamn babies who need another $250 from the hairdressers of the Western world, whose fucking sloppy, lazy husbands won't get a goddamn job. Which, by the way, under Peter Singer's situation here, we would be compelled to send every fucking penny that I would earn in my theoretical future job elsewhere, because we've lived fine, lavish lives.
No, we haven't. I'm exhausted. You've lived fine.
These last few years. And
I can't use my hand.
I still have stubborn belly fat, is what sort of
if
lavish.
you would go to a fucking nutritionist, you might find out why.
I can't afford to go to a goddamn nutritionist when there are starving children in Ethiopia at the moment. Are you out of your goddamn mind?
Those starving people come in handy when you don't, care for it.
So who could we apply to this, to Peter Singer's situation here? I think that
all I have Epicurus, who wants me to feel good and fuck.
That's easy. Epicurus says you should basically live as a hedonist.
Okay, but I feel bad not giving them money. He would say I should give them money.
He would say give a few dollars to assuage your guilt, and then eat some fucking ice cream and have plenty of sex and eat good food, and you'll feel better about things.
Then there's also the other one. Hold on. The one I just did, who was nice.
If I'm Socrates,
this Mill person who clearly read the Declaration of Independence. Mill. It was a greater good thing, so it's better that I don't give them money so that I buy.
Right. If you can make the beauty of the utilitarian position is usually that you can make any counter argument as long as you set the consequences up in your favor, right? So Peter Singer,
like that's shitty and dumb.
Well, sure, but Peter Singer has set up the consequences to always be in his favor because he believes that a simple $200 is going to save a life. And if you set up the terms of your experiment to be, I just need $200 to save a life, well, then you're going to win. Well, then you set up the different fucking terms of the experiment, and you can win your own way. You can use his own utilitarian fealty against him.
Right. Because, he's kind of overlooking that, the feeling of futility because, not every dollar you give goes to where it needs to go. There's a lot of hands that get involved, a lot of overhead, right? So you have to accept his argument.
I think the point of society would collapse and there would still be poor people, but we wouldn't be able to help them works for me.
Yeah, and ultimately,
I guess
he's right to the extent that people should do more than they currently do, right? That's a fine position to take.
If I was a billionaire, I would do the thing where you drive fast cars. That looks fun. These extreme deep space up in the sky things.
Yeah.
No.
Yeah.
Earth. Drive the cars fast.
Yes.
I get that.
Yeah. On land.
Yeah. Anyway, any more on Singer? Abe, you don't like this guy, right?
Because, it's very these contrived arguments that he's making. Doesn't make any sense. And like I said, there's the feeling of futility that people feel. It's kind of sidestepping a lot of problems with this way of thinking.
How far past losing the Bugatti should Bob go? Imagine that Bob had got his foot stuck in the track of the siding, and if he diverted the train, then before it rammed the car, it would also amputate his big toe. Should he still throw the switch to save the kid's life?
Yeah, you don't need a toe.
What if it would amputate his foot or his entire leg? This my solution to the trolley problem, which is essentially what this is, right? Whereas you always have to ask the person whose life is being saved. That's how you solve the
And
trolley
that's
problem.
in the mill? No. Yes. He thought that it was okay if people wanted to kill themselves. He was the first one
Right.
that
And
we've
so
come across. Everyone's all, don't kill yourself. And then he's like, nah,
Yeah,
it's fine.
do it.
what Lori is finding out reading her ethics this year is that apparently I got a lot of my influences from John Stuart Mill and David Hume, and I had sort of forgotten that. But I like
You forget
those guys.
everything. You act like you learn, and you don't, because you don't remember anything.
Yeah.
And you're Plato. Your whole thing is Plato. Your whole I'm just asking questions. I don't have any answers.
Hey, what
You
the?
should feel stupid.
That's
That's how your whole
that's
vibe
my whole thing,
is
yes.
Plato.
Hey, what the fuck happened in Russia the last couple days? Real quick before we go.
No.
It was a very strange weekend because like this Prigozhin, the schmuck, who has a very weird career trajectory where like he was like some prisoner selling hot dogs.
Yep.
He goes to prison. He has a catering service. Then
He's known as Putin's chef,
Right.
They call him. Yevgeny Prigozhin, and he's been the head of this what's called the Wagner division or the Wagner
Julia
group.
said that's like most of what the people who work on Russia at her job talk about are that group.
Because they're the mercenaries. They're a bunch
That
of
were
fucking
prisoners.
neo-Nazis or
and
something.
also they literally would
They're former prisoners that they freed.
They literally go to prisons and like, hey, you want in? We'll go to like
Mm-hmm.
Africa or Syria or wherever, make more money than you would in the actual military, and also, hey, not in prison anymore, right? So it's like very tempting offer, and they go with it.
And they have nothing to lose.
Yeah.
Right. So Prigozhin has to this point been a Putin loyalist, but apparently found himself entirely fed up with like the Russian military hierarchy and decided that he was going to sort of maybe coup, maybe do a little
It wasn't
coup.
clear, right? I mean, like he's been critical for months about like a lack of supplies, and he's like, fuck it, this whole way of conducting this operation is terrible, and the heads of the defense ministry or whatever need to be sacked. Like a lot of this stuff, just like without any sort of like Putin saying like shut the fuck up, like he's just saying all of these things, and then out of nowhere, he took over like some like the equivalent of a Tampa, like a city with like like a million
We were just
people.
talking about Tampa.
And like he just drives up and until some deal is brokered, like unopposed, driving like halfway to Moscow, and it's just
Right,
like
he gets to within 150 miles or something of Moscow with all of his fucking bad dudes with guns and tanks.
right. And this is like,
you say,
the unusual story where like there's just like a lot of befuddlement. Like I didn't hear a lot of people like very strong like this is what needs to happen. People were like, what the fuck is happening? Like it was just like a lot of that the first like few hours where it's like nobody knows why this is happening or what's going on or how it's gonna go.
right, and then they reach some sort of a deal, and Prigozhin's like, all right, I'll fuck off then, I guess. Like I won't coup anymore, and I'm going to take exile in Belarus,
Right.
and which, like, first of all, that's sort of been described as like a puppet government of the Putin regime anyway.
Yeah, it's very bizarre that they were the ones that took the lead, right?
And why would Prigozhin believe that he would be safe
Right.
in Belarus,
In
of all
fact,
fucking places?
he is in no way safe, right? I mean, there's no way Putin is going to let this thing just slide, right? I mean, he was he was embarrassed by this whole episode.
Right, and also didn't seem to take the obvious route of blaming the CIA or U.S. Western interference
Not
for
only
this
that,
entire
he said,
thing.
I think he like said internal whatever. Like he kind of characterized it as an internal issue.
Right, because he needs to keep Prigozhin close, apparently, because he doesn't actually have the power to depose him from his situation, or he would have, right? Like he's allowed him to become more powerful and better organized than, obviously, his own military is at this point. I don't know, and they've forgiven all of the...
Yeah, they dropped, because it was initially all these charges and like treason or all these things. They're like, never mind, everything is fine. And apparently they're not gonna punish any of these soldiers either. Like they're gonna just
Right,
the
because
whole
of
thing go.
you're allowed to do one sort of aborted coup because of all of the killing that you've done on behalf of the Russian government up
One
to
mulligan.
this point.
Yeah, and they
Right,
used it
you
up.
get a coup mulligan. I don't know. We obviously haven't talked about this stuff much through the last couple of years, and I don't have any greater insight than to just sort of point at it and be like, man, that's all fucked up, and I wonder what's going to happen. But I have to imagine that losing the support of this Wagner group is going to be really detrimental to any Russian hopes of putting an end to this conflict in a way that they would want it to be ended, which is with a Ukrainian defeat.
Right. I mean, this is in no way a good thing for Russia.
Right. Anything else? Big stuff in the news this week to hit on before we get on out of here?
No, that was tight, and we're done.
All right. You've been listening to Cast Iron Brains, a podcast with Bob and Abe. Head over to brainiron.com for a show note. Opening and closing themes were composed by Mark Gillig, tetramermusic.com, TETRAMER music.com. I am on my way to Denver for
Do you see how smoothly this goes when I produce your show, by the way?
Yeah.
If you just fucking focus and do shit instead of, what are we doing?
real fucking top tier episode this is going to turn into, I'm sure.
We'll see.
I'm on my way to Denver for my brother's bachelor party. Quick story about that. I'm going to be there for a week. I booked my flight for Wednesday, the 28th.
Saving literally hundreds of dollars.
Right.
Flying Wednesday to Wednesday instead of Friday to Sunday when the bachelor party actually is.
Right. If I had flown Friday to Sunday, it would have cost hundreds of dollars more.
Wow.
Instead, I extend my visit. I get to visit more with my young niece and nephew.
Stay for free is key to that.
And also, I'm living at my brother's house for the week, so that makes things easier too. But notably, I booked my flight for Wednesday the 28th with a return on Wednesday the 5th, right? So that gives me a full week.
A week.
In Denver. That's how that works. My brother Jesse booked a flight for Wednesday the 28th with a return flight of an hour later on Wednesday the 28th. Mm-hmm.
That's why you don't book flights when you're super high.
Don't do that, Jesse. I don't think the mistake was even realized until Andrew got a look at the flight itinerary and was like, "Hey, dummy, you're booked for a return flight 45 minutes after you land," which means I think you're going to be immediately accosted by TSA and the FBI because you look like a drug mule when you do that. You just look like you must have $100,000 in cold hard cash in your carry-on luggage, you dumbass.
It would definitely be flagged, right? Like something is happening here.
Yeah. Nothing good happens when you get on a plane to go to Denver and then get right back on a plane to go back to New York fucking 20 minutes later. Anyway, that's what I'll be up to next week. I doubt that we'll record an episode next week.
No, because then
I'm
you're
coming back
landing
Wednesday,
and leaving again.
And then I'm planning on leaving Thursday to go down and retrieve the kids from my dad's because they'll go to South Carolina for the week.
So I get a week to myself,
nice.
During which I will go see the all-female revival of 1776, the musical about the signing of the Declaration of Independence.
Oh, neat.
Yeah, so we have traditionally taken July 4th week off. Anyway, so don't expect new content from us next week. Abe, when is you still got a few weeks before Aruba, is that right?
Yeah, it's we leave on the 6th, that Thursday.
Okay.
Yeah.
So that'll overlap, right?
So that overlaps with us missing the week anyway.
When
so
do
that'll
you
be
get
good.
back?
Sundays. It's pretty quick, Thursday to Sunday.
Well, I mean, that big yacht, you can't have it for an extended period of time.
Okay, so yeah, we'll be back the week of the 10th through whatever.
Yeah.
No.
Anyway, did you, I know we had a short week here this week, and I don't know your normal schedule. Did you make it to the movies this week?
3 times.
3 times? Abe,
3 times.
You just go every night of the week?
It was like,
There are
Wednesday,
7
Thursday,
days
Friday.
in a week.
All right, let's see if I can guess. Let me pull up the
one of them I
movies.
already mentioned last week that I was going to watch this week.
Yeah, but Bob doesn't listen to you.
Yeah, I don't know what you say until I listen back to it. I'm
just listened.
Just
We
wait.
Just listened to last week's episode. Bob only listens to himself.
You know what? That was a good episode. I mean, we had a good talk last week. I think that was a good one. We've got The Flash. We've got that Pixar movie, Elemental. You'd already seen The Flash and Spider-Man, Little Mermaid. All right, so I'm going to guess that you saw Asteroid City.
Yep.
I'm going to guess that you saw Elemental. And I'm going to guess that you saw... No Hard Feelings. Those are the three that I'm guessing that you saw.
2 out of 3. Went to go see
not bad.
Asteroid City, No Hard Feelings, and The Blackening, which I will admit, a terrible trailer. Like, if you ever watch it, it's like kind of like a spoof well, they play it for laughs. It's like this horror movie, not a lot of horror in it. Or these black friends go to the woods and, you know, they have to play some game that's like themed around blackness or whatever.
I'm looking at a poster for the movie. The tagline is "We can't all die first," because of the trope.
That's cute.
First explored probably in Scream, or pointed out in Scream about the black character always dies first.
Scream
Right.
2.
Scream 2, that was mentioned. In 7 black friends go away for the weekend, ended up trapped in a cabin with a killer who has a vendetta. Will their street smarts and knowledge of horror movies help them stay alive? Probably not. Is that coded language, the street smarts? Is that...
I think they're probably playing at it. But,
yeah. Any good?
Relative to my very low expectations, like it was much better. And then like I went to Rotten Tomatoes, and it's like highly rated on both scores, like the fan one and the critic one. So I was like, oh, I guess this was supposed to be a decent movie, because like by all accounts, it's like it seemed like it's just like a cheap kind of movie.
This
But it was
says
not
it's a
bad.
2022 film. Did it get... It's on some sort of strange release schedule or something?
Yeah, that is weird, right? Maybe they like very limited L.A., New York, like in
Or
December.
maybe Google's
something?
just wrong. It says... Because it also says release date June of 2023. So
Yeah, I mean the
Maybe they
it
did
was
it
like,
twice.
Yeah, maybe it was like centered around like Juneteenth, so like they released it like timely.
Gotcha.
But and the other 2 movies are fine. Asteroid City was pretty decent. There was I'm surprised. I go to the movies a lot, and this is the first time it's happened. The person seated next to me, to my left, like he was reeking of some sort of BO, but like it was like the noticeable kind. Like,
Oh, no.
Just like, and I couldn't, like I was trying to develop my just breathe through the mouth strategy, and I couldn't, and it was just kind of distracting.
You know
the
what?
whole time.
That's appropriate, because I guarantee you he too was a mouth breather. The smelly fella next to you, also breathing through his mouth. And that was at Asteroid City that you experienced?
Yeah,
this?
Asteroid City. Yeah.
That's too bad. Did you change seats, or did you just deal?
No, I was like, no, it'd be too rude to leave. You know?
Did you chat him up? I'll bet you
Yeah.
fucking chatted him up, didn't you?
I did not.
A little bit. All right. So that's Wes Anderson's latest, right?
Yes. There are like a million. I mean, he does this a lot, but like there's like a million known names in this thing. It's like every character.
Yeah.
Like,
I love that guy's movies. I think his movies are great, and I don't know why people complain about him having a particular style. It is fine
People complain
I mean, he
about
does.
stuff.
to have a particular style.
yeah.
I'm surprised that you are appreciative of his movies at all, because they're very precious.
Generally, I don't like. I don't like his movies the first go around. Like,
Interesting.
It's like you're doing a thing, and then I'll circle back, and I'm like, all right, and then like kind of like I can like maybe the third viewing I'll like it because like, oh, you're doing a thing, and like I have to like get
So
past
you
that.
can sort of
Yeah.
allow yourself to see past the artifice of it to the story
Right.
that he's telling, and it works
But
for
this
you.
one I liked from the get-go, because like he had another movie that like the French Dispatch or something. That one I was like, all right, I need to see this a couple of times, because the first time I saw it in the theater, I was like,
Yeah, I don't think we haven't seen The French Dispatch yet. Still,
No.
I think it's that one that's streaming channel.
I'm pretty
Yeah.
sure it is too. You got to be in the mood, the right frame of mind to watch a Wes Anderson movie, I think.
The
And
problem I have is because they're all the same, I just want to watch the ones that I like so much.
yeah, I don't think that they're all
Yeah.
the same.
They're not
It's
all the
just-
same. That's not what I mean. But there was a time, another example is every time I tried to watch Almost Famous, I would end up switching to Jerry Maguire halfway through, because it's doing that same thing to my like little inside emotions. And it's like Almost Famous. It's like, oh, this is nice. You know what else does this? Jerry Maguire. Just put that on.
Yeah.
Like, and with Wes Anderson, it's like, oh, let's just watch Royal Tenenbaums. Like, like, I'd rather just do the one that I know I
Yeah.
like, and
Whereas-
like you said, you like it more on the second and third viewing.
Right.
So like
Yeah.
that's what I end up doing with Wes Anderson movies.
I've always gone back and forth between Life Aquatic and Rushmore as my
Life
favorite.
Aquatic's my favorite.
I think I ultimately come down on Life Aquatic probably because so many people don't like that one.
Who doesn't like it?
People think that that's where he like lost the way, and that one's
They're
too
dumb.
twee and special,
It's
and I
so
disagree. I
good.
think that's the best one, probably.
It's a horrible reason to like something.
No, I'm just saying I recognize in myself that sort of antagonistic approach to things, and as much as I love Rushmore, I think that it is a less fully formed vision
Yeah,
than
Rushmore's not my
Life
favorite.
Aquatic is. Plus, it's got the wonderful David Bowie covers soundtrack
Yeah.
that guy does the David Bowie songs, which are spectacular. We watched the rest of the Arnold documentary last night, episodes 2 and 3.
They were fine.
Yeah, they were fine. They were good. I thought that they covered what, like, the accusations against him as a groper of women in as acceptable a way as it can be covered in something that is obviously in Arnold's pocket and coming from Arnold's perspective and his corner the entire time. And I think that there are people who will say that this is not the case, but I thought he was appropriately chagrined by the whole thing. And it's not clear that any of his actions were particularly heinous, like in the way that you don't want him grouped in with all of the worst offenders of the Me Too era, right? This isn't a Harvey Weinstein type. He's just a good time guy who thought it was fun to grab tits and now realizes that it's not.
During a time
Those tits
when
are
it was
attached to people.
presented as a thing, like all the way up until the Man Show, like Girls Gone Wild time. Like it's shitty, but there's an expectation that like, you're gonna get groped sometimes.
I love Arnold. I think he's great, and he's such a weird character to me because I think that you're always getting an authentic version of who he is. It's this bizarre combination of artifice and truth in the same package all of the time. And I don't want to say it's Trumpy, but it is sort of Trumpy, right? Where with Donald Trump, you feel like it's all a fucking show, and also it's all 100% authentically Donald Trump. And Donald Trump is the worst possible version of it, and Arnold Schwarzenegger might be the best possible version of it.
Right.
Where, like, yes, he's putting on a thing,
I mean, Jack Black might be a good example.
but he really means it, right? Like, Arnold really believes all of the just work hard and do your best,
Oh, yeah.
and good things will happen for you. Like, he seems to fully embrace that and live it in ways.
Jose Andres, there's tons of people who are like characters of themselves.
Right. I enjoy the shit out of him, and I think that his naivete is well earned in a weird way. Like,
Right. I mean, the confirmation bias that he must have, right? Because he applied all of these things. Like, I'm going to work hard at this thing, and then good things will happen. He works hard at it, and guess what? Good things happen to him, and he does it in different arenas, and the same feedback he's getting. So he must think like must be the way it works.
Right.
I do the thing, and then I get like an immediate positive feedback, and I just continue to do that. And he probably thinks everybody else has that same reality when in fact
right,
they
and
don't.
it's particularly amusing, like, and self-reinforcing because he's saying all of these things, and he's got a weird $100,000 tank that he drives around his sprawling $100 million California estate while he chews on $300 cigars, sitting in front of his like comically 15-foot long personal fireplace as he reads a book that's just like a Bible of Arnold's life that's just oversized, beautiful prints of him through the years, right? And then you imagine this person like as I'm watching this TV show and listening to him talk about, like, if you just believe it and work hard, it will be true. Like, instead, you picture some destitute, fucking shit-covered asshole on the streets saying the exact same words.
Yes,
and,
I know.
And that's like 99 out of 100 people are that, right? The ones who believe that things will turn out good if you work hard and try hard and you're a good person. You just end up covered in shit under a bridge somewhere. But every once in a while, it is 100% true. And Arnold should believe that shit. And he should spread that message as best he sees. It's fine and good.
Right.
Did we do anything else besides baseball and Arnold?
No, your dad's here. We haven't done anything.
Yep. And Pops is here because he's got to watch the kids while I go gallivanting off in Denver to drink too much because I'm much too old for bachelor parties. But here we are.
I'm going to have a nice quiet time.
Good.
It's going to be really nice.
Abe, you got anything else for us tonight?
Nope.
Well, I guess that's all we've got for tonight then, and we will talk to you next time.
Later.
You should bring this Peter Singer article with you. And every time
that's a good point.
There's an ostentatious display of obscene wealth and waste, you should wave it in his stupid face.
I'll try to work it in. Maybe like during the next morning's breakfast when it's kind of like everybody's just relaxed and eating.
Right.
I can I was reading this interesting article.
How many fucking Ethiopians didn't make it to 40 because you had to have this fucking party, you piece of shit? Happy birthday.
Julia went to Montreal, as you did.
Oh, nice.
And her luggage was lost, which was returned, but there's no guarantee of that. So the guy, the next day or 2 days later was like, go ahead and start itemizing so that we can compensate you for it. It was a week's worth of clothes that she packed because there was no laundry. And she was like, if you ever want to feel really shitty, just like figure out how much you're carrying around. Just like, I need all that. Like thousands of dollars.
Yeah.
This is why, and I know we're done with this conversation and now the night is over, but compared to Julia's luggage, I would have $100 maybe.
But Bob, that's the thing. When you're spending more money on clothes, it's because you're not buying them from sweatshops.
Bullshit. Because you don't need new Lululemon every fucking 6 months. I just don't buy it. I do not buy that a high quality garment requires fucking being replaced 3 times a year.
It shouldn't.
Right, but you keep spending money at Lululemon. That's what people do.
I'm not replacing anything. What have I gotten rid of?
That's not the point.
I get rid of shit that sucks. The stuff that I was replacing the stuff that I was buying from Old Navy did need constant replacing.
Right, but is it not the case that most people could live far more austere lives than they do and still live incredibly comfortably? Singer's not wrong there.
If you have nice things, if you're being realistic, like the things that are less shitty in an ethical business way are gonna cost more. And if you have those things and you take them all and you put them in a suitcase to go somewhere else for a week, it doesn't matter how old they are. That's what they cost.
I think Abe's more sympathetic to this position tonight because he's wearing that fancy Nike pullover instead of
It's not.
instead of a Fun
Sunday
Run
garb.
T-shirt that you're usually wearing when we record these.
But it's just the reality of the situation.
I guess. Also, that's going to Montreal for a week is obviously not acceptable
No,
either.
but that's part of it. It's like, do you want to feel shitty? Write down how much your suitcase cost for your vacation that you took for no reason.
Change of scenery is a good reason.
Yeah, but
Look at different
compared to a life, Abe, compared to a child's life.
The proceeding was created with 100% human content.